Thanksgiving was There was no time for us to even say grace. There was no carving done on the turkey. In the crystal dish that my mother only pulled out once a year, the stuffing was currently in the process of steaming. In addition, I was still standing, still smiling, and still holding that pie when my father asked, "Rachel, please return the $50,000. You could even choose not to return home at all." At first, I was under the impression that I had misunderstood him or that it was some kind of insensitive joke. Thanksgiving was not a time for drama in our family, and Dad was not the type of man who was prone to acting out in dramatic ways. To put it another way, not until that evening. Table opposite her, Lisa sat with her hands folded in her lap, as if she were attending a funeral. Tablecloth with his eyes. My mother, as kind and gentle as she is, refused to look me in the eye. Pie tray in my hands, I noticed that it was suddenly heavier than it ought to have been. If it may shed light on the situation that was taking place. Tense. Make this more difficult than it needs to be. Am curious as to what it is that you blame me for. Last, Lisa decided to glance up. Red mascara that was hanging to the corners of her eyes gave the impression that she had been crying for hours, yet her voice was unmistakable. Statement from Mom. Month before last, you assisted her in setting up internet banking, and then $50,000 vanished without a trace. Opened my mouth, I heard no sound coming out. It was true that I had assisted my mother with her financial matters. Possibly because she did not have faith in the cloud, she had been anxious about the prospect of going paperless. As a result, I would sit down with her on a Sunday afternoon and guide her through the application, including the passwords and the security questions. She went so far as to jot down everything on a small notepad that we kept in the drawer of the kitchen cabinet. As of now, it has been 4 weeks. It's been 4 weeks. As of this moment, they were telling me that that was the moment when I took from her. Is this even possible? It was a whisper. You believe I stole money from my mother? In the end, David said, his voice sounding as though it was painful to utter those words. We had a hard time accepting it as true. On the other hand, the bank verified that the withdrawals were processed online. Access was denied to anyone else. Not anyone else. I am the only exception. I looked at my mother. Not only did she not flinch, but she also did not nod or shake her head. Simply picking up her napkin and pressing it to her mouth as if she were feeling sick was all that was done. It dawned on me at that moment. Whether it was the pie, the traffic, or the annual ritual, none of it made a difference. Their daughter was no longer their daughter. I was a possible suspect. After carefully placing the pie on the edge of the counter, I lowered it down. The tin made a tiny clicking sound when it struck the rock. After laying my coat down earlier, I went back to the chair and pulled it up from the back of the chair. I never made a sound. Behind me, my father whispered, "You have until the end of the week to complete this task." Next, we check in with the attorney. In the car, I did not shed a tear. Unlike in movies, I did not yell, cuss, or smash the steering wheel. I did not do any of those things. I have just driven coat, which is still half buttoned, and the pie is still sitting on the kitchen counter behind me, unfinished. The streets were peaceful, with only porch lights and paper turkeys affixed to windows to provide illumination. It was the evening of Thanksgiving, and the entire town smelt like calm and cinnamon, along with the aroma of gravy. I am the only exception. I checked into the same roadside in that I had usually passed on the way into town, but I had never had a cause to stop there before or since. During the holiday, the clerk did not inquire as to why I required a room. I was deeply grateful for that petty act of charity. The room had a stench that was reminiscent of microwave popcorn and worn carpet. Despite the fact that my hands were still shaking, I removed my boots and sat down on the edge of the bed. My own parents believed that I had stolen from them when I was 34 years old, while I was working as a senior forensic accountant and trusted with millions of dollars in corporate audits. To make matters worse, I wasn't really startled by it. Not in every way. A number of indications had been present, including the manner in which Lisa would roll her eyes whenever my mother boasted about my promotions, and the manner in which my father had once inquired, "Don't you think it's time to settle down?" Let's pretend for a moment that my professional life isn't exactly what it is. Even when I volunteered to pay for the expense of a new roof for the house over the Christmas season of the previous year, David had grumbled something about my trying to buy loyalty into the relationship. At first, I thought they were fooling around. It seemed to me that we were still related. The ceiling was the focus of my attention as I reclined on the comforter. It was as if I were trying to relive the day that my mother asked me to assist her with her bank account, including every single tap, login, and password reset. Had I failed to notice something? Perhaps the journal that we stored in the drawer had been seen by another person. It is the drawer. Unlocking it was never a problem. That might have been opened by anyone. The circumstances of Lisa's life dictated whether or not she continued to reside at home. David was in possession of a key to the house. Although it was true that I had been the one to guide Mom through the setup, that did not mean that I was the only person who was aware of it. Despite this, they had believed it. It was believed that I had waited for my mother to become ill in order to steal her money. $50,000 in total. I was as if I required it. That is, if I ever would. The ringer on my phone. A message sent by Lisa. This was not the outcome that we had hoped for. But you made it difficult to have faith in you. There is no Thanksgiving joy. I have no hope that you are okay. So that's it. It was as if I had damaged something. As if I were the one who was responsible for apologizing to them. I faced down the phone and turned it over. My days at work consist of figuring out how to unravel the mystery of hidden embezzlement shell businesses and fraudulent invoices. What it looks like when money vanishes and when someone makes it appear as though it was someone else's fault is something I am familiar with. Also, at this very moment, someone had chosen me to be their fall girl. The lights became hazy as I continued to fix my gaze on the ceiling. If I was going to be treated like the criminal in the family, then perhaps it was time for me to begin researching in the same manner as a criminal. I got up really early the following morning. Not to be alarmed. It's just instinct. After spending years investigating corporate fraud, I had learned one thing. Money does not truly vanish from existence. Just like that, it is diverted. The challenge lies in determining where to look first and who will profit from it. I opened my laptop on the desk in the motel and poured myself a cup of the bitter coffee that was available in the lobby. A pattern of elder financial exploitation had recently been investigated by my company. The subject of the investigation was retirees who had modest savings accounts that were suddenly depleted in 3 withdrawals, each of which was just below the government reporting limit. Although there was more than one bank, one of them kept turning up more frequently than the others. It is Greenwell Mutual, the bank owned by Mom. My family was unaware that I was a part of the investigation because I had not informed them. Technically speaking, it was confidential, but I was authorized to access the transaction data within the company, and I was absolutely certain of who I should question about it. I quickly wrote a message to Theo, who is the compliance officer who is in charge of our current pending case. All that is required is a name, a date range, and a city. What I required, including timestamps, withdrawal amounts, and teller logs, was delivered to me within an hour. The 3 withdrawals were made from my mother's account 5 days apart from one another. $20,000 first. The second amount is $15,000. The third amount is $15,000. Every single one of them was completed in person, not online. Exactly, that was the initial crack. I had been accused of utilizing internet banking, and they said that I was the only person who had access to it. If, on the other hand, the money was stolen in person, then it was not me. I clicked on the link to the security footage that was supplied. Clear enough despite having a low resolution. The initial video was loaded. It is Greenwell Mutual. Today, October 10th, from 13 p.m. looking cautiously over her shoulder, a young woman approached the counter with a frightened expression. A gray hoodie, a wide pair of sunglasses, and a blonde ponytail. At first, I was under the impression that someone had hired a proxy. A stranger got paid to pretend to be the mother. Nevertheless, the young lady moved closer to the camera and removed her mask in order to have a conversation with the teller. It is Lisa. In spite of the blurry feet, I was able to recognize that face. Babysat that face if I could. Observed it as it blew out birthday candles and shed tears over boyfriends who were unsuccessful. She was tapping her fingers on the counter while she fidgeted with her hands. She signed something and then handed her what appeared to be her mother's identification. Since the time she was in high school, her handwriting had not changed. When I sat back in my chair, the light in the motel room above me began to flicker. It was not merely that they had stolen the money. They had planned it, considered the timing, waited until I worked with my mother to make the transition to digital, and then used that as a cover to frame me. I started watching the second video. Today is October 15th. That same branch. It was David who did it this time. There is no disguise, and there is no nervous energy. Confident and calm. In a humorous manner, he signed off on the account as if he were the owner of the account. The third video features Lisa once more. Another pair of sunglasses, but the same hoodie. It made my skin crawl because of how arrogant it was. However, there was still a piece that was missing. They have a way of gaining access to Mom's identification and account information. It was then that I recalled something. In the 2 weeks prior to my assistance in setting up the application, my mother had undergone outpatient tests at the hospital. Everything is fine. These are simply early scans. Lisa had offered to spend the night accompanying her as a volunteer. The purse that belonged to Mom had been with her the entire time. The checkbook, the bank statements, and the driver's license that she possessed. In that very moment, it all began. However, that was not the end of it. I ensured that the metadata from the account setup was available. After I had left town, the first time I logged in was not from my mother's phone, but rather from a tablet that was connected to the Wi-Fi at home. It was the same IP address that Lisa used when she viewed Netflix online. In addition, the one-time password for the OTP was sent to a different email address that I had not registered. I did some research on it. It was David who was the owner of the recovery phone number. It wasn't only that they were messy, they were also haughty. Their assumption was that no one would challenge it. If the successful daughter was the obvious offender, then the answer is no. In the event that the rest of the family adopted a unified tone of voice, I put the laptop away firmly. It was not merely a misunderstanding that occurred. It wasn't a moment of pure desperation or a mistake made with a borrowed sum of money. It was a fraudulent act. Additionally, they had exploited my affection for my mother as a smokescreen. I proceeded to shut the laptop bag with a zipper and then picked up the phone. Do not contact the authorities. Not at this time. Rather than that, I called my office. Specifically requested the printouts of the teller signatures from Theo, who was helpful in providing them. They would be necessary for me to compare. After that, I opened my suitcase and took out a slender black folder, an example of the kind of folder I used when I was giving presentations in court. In the event that they desired to have a villain in the family, I would demonstrate to them what it was like when the villain recorded receipts. I did not make a phone call in advance. It was just as the sunshine was beginning to hit that golden slant that it always did between Halloween and Christmas that I drove back late on Monday afternoon. The quality of light that used to give the impression that the house was a home. Not right now. There was a lot of traffic in the driveway. The SUV belonging to David. It is Lisa's compact. It was Mom's old car. There are no visitors. The only family. I parked there, at the curb. As I sat there for a brief period of time, my hands were resting on the leather folder that was sitting on my lap. The one that contained every receipt, every timestamp, and every lie that they believed no one would notice. After that, I exited the building, climbed the steps leading up to the porch, and then I allowed myself to enter. It smelled like chicken soup and rosemary when you entered the house. The lights in the kitchen were running. The faint hum of talk and the clatter of silverware were both audible to me with my ears. A laugh that was no longer mine despite my best efforts. Each one of them was located in the kitchen. Lisa was sitting on the counter, holding a coffee mug in her hand, and swinging her legs as if she were 13 years old again. As he leaned against the refrigerator, his arms were crossed, and his look was indecipherable. As she stood by the sink, Mom diligently dried the dishes with slow, deliberate movements. Something was being stirred on the stove by this father. When I walked in, they stared up at me. Also, everything came to a halt. Nobody took the time to speak. I went behind them and made my way to the island, where I positioned the folder on the smooth wooden surface that we had previously used to roll out cookie dough. I proceeded to open it. I whispered to you that you thought I had stolen from my mother. Permit me to demonstrate what actually took place. The air underwent a mild alteration, similar to that which occurs before a storm. Taking out the first photograph, which was a still from the bank surveillance footage, I did so. Lisa, wearing sunglasses, was seen signing a form while leaning over the counter of a teller. Not online, not me, October 10th, $20,000. Not even Lisa moved from her position. In the second picture, David was seen smiling while wearing a navy sweater and presenting a check to someone. As of the 15th of October, $15,000. The quiver that I could sense in the edges of my voice was not due to rage, but rather to self-control. This was not a group of strangers. These were the individuals with whom I had spent my formative years. A firmer grip was exerted by Lisa's fingers on her mug. She began by opening her mouth, but then she shut it again. It was the identical branch and signatures that I used when I laid down the teller slips. I compared them to your handwriting, Lisa, which was on the note that was posted on the refrigerator the previous week. After a little pause, Lisa eventually made her voice heard. Her voice was more delicate than I had recalled it being. Have you gone through all of our belongings? Nearly softly, I cocked my head to the side. Did you go through your mother's? Even though her hands were shaking, Mom went for the eyes of the document and began to scan the print. Her voice was soft and almost begging when she spoke into the microphone. The bank, on the other hand, claimed that it was done online. The way they interpreted what I said was that. However, the withdrawal process alone was not. In the end, the tablet that was linked to your Wi-Fi was the source of the online access. A recovery email that was associated with David's phone number was supposed to be used to access the account. The kitchen was filled with a hush that was reminiscent of snow falling. The man stopped moving around. Lisa averted her gaze. David looked down at the ground as if he were wondering whether he would discover a different truth there. You would make me believe that my daughter had stolen from me, my mother whispered. Maybe she wasn't even looking at me, but she wasn't looking at anyone in particular. You warned me not to go back to my house. I said that it should be even quieter, and you never inquired as to whether or not I was the one who did it. It was not the charge, nor even the prospect of legal representation, but rather the absence of the question that caused the most pain. At long last, Lisa had a look at me. Her expression contorted not out of remorse, but rather out of resentment. Everything, including the job, the praise, and the respect, is always given to you. All I wanted to do was equal the playing field. I looked at her for a considerable amount of time. She appeared to be older than she did the previous week. Another possibility is that I was experiencing her for the very first time. Nothing that I stated was taken seriously by you. You set fire to it. David attempted to clear his throat. His tone was uninteresting. My mother, she will be all right. Rachel achieves a higher income than any of us put together. It was not a personal attack. As I struggled against the chill that was creeping up my spine, I let out a slow breath. It is always a personal matter when it comes to family. At the table, I observed my mother sitting slowly with the folder still open in front of her. Her palms were facing upward as she sat with her hands resting in her lap, as if she was at a loss for purpose. At long last, Dad made his voice heard. Can you tell me what you intend to do, Rachel? I looked into his eyes. I didn't have the sensation of being the child in the room for the first time in several days. It is not my intention to press charges, but I have forwarded the paperwork to the attorney. Whatever you choose to do with it is up to you. He gave a single nod. I was exhausted and older than I knew I was. I closed the folder using zipping. As a result of years of attending meetings and doing studies, my hands moved on their own muscle memory. At this point, it seemed to be it. In the event that I did not return the money that I had stated, you warned me not to return. Despite the fact that I did not steal the money, I did bring the truth. I waited for the words to land as long as they were supposed to. Then I made a turn. The voice of Rachel's mother broke. At the threshold of the entrance, I hesitated. I told them that Thanksgiving was over. Every one of you made certain of that. I did not utter a single word before leaving the house. That folder was not taken by me. The pie was not taken by me. Those are my keys. And whatever portion of me was still under the impression that they would have selected me. There was a delay in my departure for home. My car was parked outside the home, and I sat there for a long, watching the curb. When I left, no one followed me. The illumination remained on. No longer did Lisa's laughter come back. The door was not opened by David in order to make a statement. There was no one who raced down the driveway to offer their apologies. and it, more than anything else, provided me with all the information that I required. When I returned to Boston, the city had a more reassuring and peaceful atmosphere. Despite the fact that I went back to work as if nothing had happened, I was not quite the same person. On Sunday evenings, I stopped making phone calls. I failed to examine the chat in the family group. I waited 3 whole days before I listened to the voicemail that was waiting for me on my phone for the symbol to start blinking. She had sent it to me. What a mistake we made, Rachel. I am aware of that now. Simply put, I was adamant about not believing it. My apologies. My expectation is that you will not forgive us. All I wanted to do was let you know. The house has a sense of emptiness. Prior to the minute mark, she hung up the phone. A fortnight has passed. One day, a letter arrived. Actual paper and envelopes are used. A picture was found within. We are David, Lisa, and I, and we are 6, 8, and 10 years old. As we sat on the back porch wearing Halloween costumes that did not match each other. This was me, the Scarecrow. Lisa had wings made of tinfoil. A layer of crimson paint had just been applied to David. One line was written on the reverse side of the photograph. Prior to your departure, we were unaware of the extent to which we would miss you. There is no signature. David did not make any attempt to contact me. Neither does Lisa. However, a cousin who continued to reside in the neighborhood stated that both of them had moved out of the house. Mom ceased communicating with them both. She stated that she required some space. I did not inquire about the significance of that. The offer to return was not made by me. Rather than that, I created something else. For the purpose of providing financial protection to senior citizens, I initiated a weekend course at the community college. Despite the fact that it was not glamorous, I had the impression that I could control it. While I was in class on a Saturday afternoon, an older woman approached me and said, "I wish I had a daughter like you." I gave a courteous grin. It wasn't what I was thinking that I said, and so did my. At one time, a tree was not present during the month of December, not receiving a call. In the absence of the annual ornament exchange that I used to orchestrate, you are not prepared for the kind of sadness that comes not from death, but rather from the knowledge that the people you love chose someone else's version of you over your own. This is the kind of grief that no one can adequately prepare you for. Moreover, after they had made that decision, they were unable to change their minds. Even now, I am keeping the folder. My workplace and my desk are not where you can find it. A copy of the mortgage and some old tax returns are tucked away in a drawer a short distance from the bookshelves. Since that evening, I have not opened it anymore. It is not necessary for me to, due to the fact that the facts have not altered. I too have not done so.